Welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire.
What does asbestos management mean to you?
I used to really struggle with the asbestos management at my site, but now it's a breeze.
It used to be really expensive. I was paying loads, but now I've got my asbestos power team in place. It's so much easier.
Asbestos can be a pain in the arse if not handled right.
We had to stop the job because asbestos was discovered. Now we don't have that problem.
Asbestos management is easier than you think. Asbestos management. Be proactive, not reactive. Think about asbestos first, not last.
And now your hosts, best-selling authors and asbestos experts, Ian Stone and Neil Munro.
Welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire. I'm Ian Stone. And I'm Neil Munro. So today we're going to talk about, we had a bit of a question that came in from somebody within the Asbestos Knowledge Empire Facebook community, and they asked, what's the difference between non-licensed works and notifiable non-licensed works? And particularly attention between why does it change? So, for instance, why does a material that is non-licensed suddenly turn into a notifiable works? So we kind of wanted to answer those questions today. So essentially what it is why does a material that's non-licensed during removal suddenly become notifiable? So we wanted to kind of cover that off in today's podcast. Just to kind of differentiate, so we all know where we're at with it. There's kind of the three levels of removal. There's non-licensed, non-notifiable, non-licensed but notifiable, and then there's fully licensed and fully notifiable asbestos works. The third category is for the higher risk, high fibre content stuff such as lagging, insulating boards, sprays, that type of stuff. We're not talking about that today. Today we're talking about the lower risk materials, the asbestos cement, the textured coatings, that kind of stuff, aren't we?
Yeah, vinyl tiles, it might be a cement flue pipe, those types of low risk, sort of asbestos bound within the matrix type of materials.
So first off, non-notifiable, non-licensed removal would look like, say, a garage roof, cement garage roof, corrugated garage roof. It's in a good condition. Upon reviewing, the contractor has a look and decides that it's not likely to disintegrate or deteriorate during the removal process. They can crop the bolts easily, remove the sheets easily, place them down and wrap them. And essentially, it's kind of like removing a cement sheet whole that's in a good condition.
Yeah, minimal breakage.
Minimal breakage, minimal risk, kind of altogether, really. So that is non-licensed, non-notifiable works.
Yeah, to give you another example, so you've got asbestos texture coating that's been applied to a plasterboard ceiling. Generally speaking, the removal of that is that the contractor will want to remove as much as possible whole sheets of the plasterboard. So they would be prized from their fixings, lifted down to the floor, wrapped up and disposed of. So there will be some breakage of the texture coating, but it will be minimal.
Yeah, it's minimal because, like you said, the board in its whole, in its entirety, is pretty much removed.
Yeah, so essentially you're not removing really the actual asbestos product, but more the product that it's been applied to.
Yeah.
So that would be classed as non-licensed. Now, to flip those two examples over, so when would they become notifiable?
Well, take the garage roof example, for instance. If you look at the garage roof and before you start works, it's already deteriorated. You can see it's friable, you can see it's damaged, you can see it looks brittle.
Yeah, one of those horrible weathered ones, it's really gone, it's really been suffered some severe damage from weather, it's been had moss growing on it and it's starting to really deteriorate and become weak and brittle.
Yeah, so if you look at it and you think that, well, straight away, alarm bell should ring because when you touch that, when you start manhandling that, you know it's going to break up.
Yeah, it's going to start.
It's going to
basically snapping in your hands, really, isn't it?
Yeah. So straight away, that would become notifiable before the job starts.
Yeah. Another example is if it was a roof that had been maybe, overclad, or it's been, sometimes they used to apply, and I have seen this on a lot of domestics where it's been used as shuttering as well, and you'd have to break the material out. So that would then be classed as notifiable, where, you've got to get some sort of machinery, maybe a small hand can go, just to sort of break that material up.
Yeah.
You're basically disturbing the matrix of the material and you're degrading the actual asbestos material to actually remove it.
So the texture coating example,
yes.
How would that become notifiable?
So again, the texture coating, so it's the same asbestos material, but it's been applied to a different scenario. So for instance, where you've got either a concrete ceiling or it's been applied to a wall, You know, that may be a plastered wall, or it may be a brick or breeze block wall.
So literally texture coating straight onto the surface of the wall,
so
not onto plasterboard or anything like that,
Yeah.
straight onto the hard surface.
So it completely changed the removal process, because you can't remove it whole. You can't remove it on the whole sheets. You've now got to go into either a scraping or mechanical removal process. So if it's been applied to some plaster on a wall, it's quite easy to sort of chip the plaster off, but you have to use, you know, either hand tools or mechanical process to actually break that material off. And as you can imagine, it's a really sort of messy process. You're going to completely destroy the actual matrix of the asbestos material to get that off. That then does become a higher risk removal process. And for instance, where it's been applied to a concrete ceiling, you're then looking at either using sort of removal gels
chemicals
to obviously loosen that material off it, and it's literally just scraping it off the surface. So you're completely breaking down the matrix of the asbestos material itself, therefore making it a slightly higher risk removal process, and therefore it falls into the notifiable category. So there are just a couple of examples of the difference between those. We've talked about the actual notification process, so the works have to be notified before they start. Now, that could be any time, whether it's a month, a week, or even just 5 minutes before the works start. There's a couple of additional things that the actual contractor or the employer of the contractor need to do if it is undertaking notifiable works, and that's medical surveillance and keeping the health records for those individuals. There's a bit more to it, and generally speaking, if you are employing non-licensed contractors, definitely if the works fall into the notifiable category, you need to be asking, you know, are they suitable for doing those works? Because they are generally a little bit high risk.
They are high risk. I mean, for both non-notifiable and notifiable works, the contractor needs to have similar things in place as well, which often get overlooked. And I know we spoke about this on previous podcasts, but just as a bit of a recap, insurances, risk assessments, plans of works, face fit testing for the guys and the masks.
Yep, checked and certified equipment. It's a real biggie. You make sure that their DOP tests on the vacs and stuff like that. That's really important. Because just going back to those jobs, you know, especially the texture coating ones, the removal process on those, they're horrible jobs, especially when you're using chemicals to remove it from the texture coating. These jobs are really horrible and they're messy.
It's labour intensive. It's literally you're at the coalface scraping
it off, and because of the wet material, it just goes everywhere. It slops everywhere. Now, if this contractor's not geared up for that type of work, you can get into all sorts of problems with, you know, this texture coating basically just goes everywhere. You know, if it's not been polyphened, you know, the enclosure, it's essentially you can't do those works really without, you know, if not a full enclosure. So non-licensed, just normal standard non-licensed contractors are not generally geared up for building enclosures.
And that's a good point, actually, because when you think about it, asbestos contractors that build enclosures day in and day out, it is kind of an art form. If anybody's ever had a go at trying to lay out big 1,000 gauge poly, so it's neat, orderly,
Crisp.
It covers everything.
Yeah.
It's a pain in the arse. It's a real difficulty.
Yeah, because you have got to get the sheeting crisp, because if you don't, you get stuff stuck in places and it just creates a nightmare cleaning up.
Yeah, in the folds and the flaps and all the rest of it, and then you take it all down at the end and before you know it, there's shit all over the floor because you didn't see it.
Because literally that texture coating just goes everywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely, I would always recommend using a licensed contractor, but particularly with the notifiable non-licensed stuff, again, even more of a reason to use a licensed contractor.
Yeah. They're set up for that. They're geared up for it, for any eventuality, whereas the non-licensed contractors, if something does go wrong or it does go awry, not according to plan, well, they might have to stop the job and come back to it or get another contractor in, which could be a pain because they're not set up for it.
Yeah, and they're going to have all the background knowledge as well. You know, there is occasions where non-licensed works can slip into the licensed category, depending on the material they're working on and the removal process. There are occasions where it can slip into that category. And if you've got a licensed contractor on the job, they're going to have the knowledge of the background. They're going to have previous experience in doing those works. They're going to have the air monitoring results to back that up. And they're professionals. It's what they do day in, day out. Yeah, remember, asbestos first, not last.